Hi everyone, this is a short video about a very core academic skill, and that is designing a thesis. One of the secrets of being successful as a student is learning how to design an effective thesis. And it's one of those things that we don't really cover in a lot of depth, but it's really something that separates the credits from the distinctions and the high distinctions. And what a thesis is the individual and unique argument that you are making when you are writing a paper. So it's how you take the topic as it is set, as it is delivered, and you turn it into something that is your own. A thesis is the backbone of a paper. It holds the paper together, it has a point, it makes an argument. So in some ways you can see it as a structural thing, as something that links each of those paragraphs together and each of those thoughts and ideas together as well. It's something which has a direction, it has a point. Like a river, it might bend, it might turn, it twist, it might have tributaries, but ultimately it's going in a direction. When you read a good paper, you can see this. You can see how each piece fits together. Each piece leads and builds towards the final conclusion. A poor paper is more like a swamp. It's unclear where all these paragraphs come from, what they mean to each other, or where we're going. So if you want to think about this as a metaphor, think about the river and not the swamp. Now, before we go any further, there is a golden rule here, and that is always, always, always check when you're designing a thesis. Check with your tutor, check with the person who's going to be marking, check with the lecturer. Whoever it is in your particular course that has the final say, make sure you check and say, I'm thinking of doing, on this paper, I'm thinking of doing this particular topic, and this is the thesis I'm going to argue. Because there's no point getting to the end and finding out that they have something different in mind or don't like the way you've built a thesis. So send an email, get a written response is always a good idea, but don't think that this is an imposition, because this is what we're here for. This is really one of the more important things that academic staff do, is helping you out through this design process and helping you design a thesis that will support the research that you do. Now, there's a whole lot of related skills that I don't have time to go into here. Maybe I'll do some more videos on this. I've also written a book, quick plug, called the Law Workbook, which has a lot of these ideas in it. But when you take a thesis, there's a whole lot of processes that you go through. When you take the original topic, you break it down, you brainstorm, you build ideas, you map it, and you rebuild something. But it's always a work in progress. And one tip is always to have a sticky note by the side of your work area where you have the current version of your thesis. And always feel free to modify and to change. Again, remember that if you change it too much, you may need to go back and check with your tutor again to make sure you haven't gotten too far off the topic as they've envisaged it. But always keep it as something that's a work in progress. And one of the things you'll find that's important here is what research is available to you. Because sometimes you'll find you have a great idea and there's just no research in the field. And there's no point, unless you're going to go out and do individual unique research, which you're not going to for most papers. There's no point in pursuing something where there just isn't enough sources. On the other hand, you might find that it's a well-trodden area and you need to define it and narrow it further. Another important thing in designing a thesis is to always use different points of view and to use dissenting points of view as well. In fact, dissenting points of view can be your best friend, because where you really show off your argumentative skills is where you take something that looks like a really strong argument, you dismantle it, you take it down, and you prove why that argument doesn't apply. So at the end of the day, you always have to commit. It's no good to come up with a thesis that is, well, everyone thinks something different and it really depends on what you believe. But if you can show there are various points of view, some of which support your argument, great. Here are some that don't support it, but here are why they don't apply. Then you come across very, very strongly in that final paper. So here's an example of something where an example of a student who has done a lot to change a topic, but has done it in a way that led to a very excellent paper being designed. Okay, the initial topic that was set was what has been the legal, social and political impact of the Mabo decision. Now, the weakest papers unfortunately, were the people who followed the rules as they set down. And they said, okay, we've got a 1,000-word paper, we're going to spend 300 words on the legal impacts, we're going to spend 300 words on the social impact, 300 words on the political impact, and that gives us a 100-word summary at the end. And really, at the end of the day, these were often passing papers, usually passing papers, but they didn't have anything special about them because there wasn't enough time or room or focus on any particular thing. Now, unfortunately, there are some people who are in this category who are writing these kind of papers, following the rules, and they're not realising that they're actually limiting themselves, that other people are doing much better by stepping outside the topic, personalising and modifying the topic. I'll give you an example of what was the best paper that came out of this particular assignment, and you'll see that it's moved quite a distance away from the original topic. The thesis of the best paper was that the rise and subsequent fall of the One Nation Party can be attributed to the media misreporting of the Mabo decision, which as a thesis is concise. It's not a great title. Remember, thesis is not necessarily a title. A title that would be something like One Nation, Mabo and the Media, something simple and snappy. But the thesis is more than just a title. It's an argument. So what this student argued was that the Mabo decision was misreported quite extensively in the media, and it was reported in a way to generate fear and division in the community. And what this student argued was that the One Nation Party actually exploited that, and it was a short-term set of gains, but they managed to get significant political inroads and seats in Parliament on a misreporting of a legal decision. And this raises all sorts of interesting questions about whose responsibility is it to report a decision, and what's the relationship between the courts and the community, and particularly the convention by which judges do not publicly comment on their judgments. And there were some very interesting things happening at the time that the Mabo decision was reported, and this was also commented on in the academic articles as well. So the student had plenty of sources to use. But what was happening at the time was that the High Court was being hampered by this rule that they never comment and never clarify, because the media was saying, well, the High Court have made this ludicrous decision and they're refusing to justify it. So it was a very awkward position for them to be in. So it was getting back to the point of what we're talking about, this is a long way away from that very generic, very general topic about what have been the effects of the decision. It's looking at one specific effect in a lot of detail. The student made sure there was enough research out there, so there was actually references to back up everything they said, but actually produced something which was much, much better and much, much more interesting than just sticking to the initial topic and dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So, in summary, a thesis is something that you design. It's not just a matter of answering a topic as it's said. It's an actual process that you design something and you show your work and you demonstrate how you come to that design. It's a way of personalising, modifying and building on a topic. It's a way of putting your personal fingerprints on something in a way that shows it as excellent work of your own. You should always use multiple perspectives. And remember that the dissenting arguments are often your best friend, because those are the ones that really show your argumentative skills when you show what they are and show why they don't apply. And again, at the risk of sounding like a cracked record, which is a terrible old school technology reference, I guess. But the risk of sounding like a cracked record, always check. Even if you think it's the best topic in the world, if your tutor doesn't agree with you, then you need to actually get back and design something that they think is appropriate. Plus, there's always the chance that they will be intrigued by what you're doing, intrigued by what you've looked at, and suggest some sources, suggest some ideas, and actually help you there with designing your thesis. So there you go. I hope that gives you a bit more information on how to design a thesis.